So we are actually on record now. So I'm going to do some twiddling in the background. Richard, if you see anyone wanting to come on, can you add them, please? And I'd really appreciate that.
Okie doke.
And I would say, as I said last night, that thank you for getting all the monies over. I'm gonna say, right, what I've decided, because I was actually quite ill yesterday. I decided that I would do the class based on based on 5 Neolithic sites in Britain instead of doing the Nessa Brodgar lecture, which I wanted to give everything into it. Well, I gave everything into last night's lecture. So what I want, just telling you all now, you don't need your Nessa Brodgar sheet today. You need it ready for next week. I know you've got it there in front of you, but make sure it's there next week. So you're not going to need it next week. I just thought I needed to do it justice, a topic that I'm going to be able to put a lot of it into, but we'll be putting a lot of into this tonight as well. So that's fine. So Anne, have you got any questions for us this week?
Questions?
No, not any questions. No, God, we haven't even started the lecture yet.
No, it's all right.
Any news?
No.
No?
No.
Right, okay, right, okay. Well, what I need, Richard, I need you to give us some news, whether you've got to make it up or not.
Right, well, the first thing, you'll have to send me that email again.
Well, hang on, Anne, shut up. Which email?
For the Nessa Brodgar.
Hang on. So there was 2 people that I sent. God, this is exactly my point, right? If you send it to people, they've already got it in front of you. And Richard, I sent an email with it on, and he hasn't had it. So
No, I did, and I printed it, and you were going to do it that week. And hang on, Andy, come in.
yeah, go on.
So you didn't. You were going to do it about 3 weeks ago, and I think I must have written on it or something, and I've deleted
Right.
it. So you'll have to send it to me again.
Look, Richard, right?
News?
Look, Richard, you know, I love you to bits, Richard, right? I'll only do it for you. I will send it to you, right?
Thank you.
Because you're the class SWAT. Right. So Richard, send notes.
Another
right.
one, yeah.
No, Nessa Brodgar. Right. Okay. For next week. Right. Okay. Goff, anything that you've got for us this week?
No, nothing. Well, there was a little bit on the news tonight about the Cadw and the Welsh Government having a little bit of to do about the castle of Owen Glyndŵr.
Sycharth in Flintshire, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of to going on about that because access is not very good, and they feel they ought to be promoting it a bit more. That's all I saw. That was only half an hour ago on the news.
I really appreciate that, because this week's already not we've only just sent out a Lissig figure, just a Lissig pillar just about a week ago. We've already got more or less a full. So I've got Chepstow, where we've got an update on a bridge, which is going to be in the next Lissig pillar. We've also got Transport for Wales have partially demolished a post-medieval mill. I've got photographs of that. There's destruction of a prehistoric site in the Caerphilly Valley. We've got an excavation update that is involving Beaumaris in North Wales. So with this thing about Sycharth in North Wales, that's going to be quite useful. We've got 2 obituaries already, so it's all going. It looks like I'll be able to fill it all.
Good.
So, right. Thank you for that. That's a good little update. I don't always get things, and you know, we've got 20+ people who take part in these classes, and obviously I've got a live thing that's happening now on a Sunday on YouTube at 8 o'clock. But even then, we don't get everything filtered through, so it's very useful to get updates like that. Right, Andy, my lover, Andy. Yeah, everybody's starting to say that you've abandoned them on a Tuesday.
I'm not doing too well on that one, am I?
They all feel that that you don't love them anymore, particularly Margaret.
Oh dear. It's no, it's just unfortunate. It's just been away every Tuesday for the last few weeks. So, yeah.
You've been in Devon, haven't you?
No, Dorset.
Yeah.
Oh,
Devon. I knew you'd been in Devon. Well done, Andy. Any news?
No, mate.
All right,
Absolutely none. Even though Dorset filled with sights.
yeah.
I got to see one at a distance, and that was it. So,
Oh, right.
very disappointing. But got a daughter moved down there, so we'll be going back down there much more often and visiting a lot of them.
Hang on a
Yeah.
minute. Stop a minute. Your daughter's moving down there?
Yeah, youngest one's moved down to Christchurch, Bournemouth. So she's living down there now.
Oh, to the university.
Well, she's at BAE, so she's kind of a bit of both. So
I can't believe your daughter's actually. But then again, you started.
yeah, that's
doing
the
these
youngest
classes.
one. Yeah, the other one starts at uni next week in London. So
God, Andy, you started these classes 11 years ago. I can remember having a phone
Absolutely.
call with you.
yeah,
At Barrow and Furnace train station on the way back. No,
yes,
it wasn't.
I remember
It was-
that. Yeah, you were at the station. Yeah,
no, it was Carnforth, Andy.
or was it Carnforth? I remember you were at the railway station. Yeah, so wow, yeah. Well, you've got kids. They do that.
Well,
Yeah, they grow up.
my little Emily, right?
My little Emily. She's
she's gone to university now, but she's not my youngest. She's sort of, well, I don't know. But anyway, she's 22, and
Wow.
she's actually just starting to university now. My eldest one is actually a teacher. She's
Mm.
got a master's degree. She's actually a teacher now. So and my
Excellent.
other son, my son is in Canada.
Owen.
Yeah, Owen's in Canada. Yeah.
Oh, right. I remember Owen. Yeah, met Owen. Yeah. Wow. What's he
Yeah,
doing
he's
in
got a
Canada?
woman.
He met a woman on the internet.
Ah, these things
Oh, he wouldn't
happen.
go there for nothing. He got his you know, he got to do environmental science over in Canada
Right.
after his you know, qualifications here, which
Yeah.
I think they were more like agricultural college qualifications. So
Yeah.
he managed to get on into a university there, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. No, I didn't know he'd gone to Canada. That's great.
So we're doing pretty well, and it was just before we crack on, and Goff says get on with it. I would, my Emily. It was just like I saw her on Monday, and I just thought, oh look, Emily, I'll come down to Hereford and see you. And it's like, no, Dad, I will phone you when I want you to come to Hereford. And I thought, right, okay.
No, you're only supposed to
we'll
pick
leave that
their
one.
stuff up or them.
Yes. Yes.
Right, so
Taxi deliveries. Yeah.
exactly. So, right, anyway, we're cracking on. So we've got a site in Ireland I want us to look at briefly. We've got some sites in Orkney I want us to look at briefly. We've got another site somewhere else in Britain to look at, so that's a secret. We've got a site in Somerset I want us to look at, and I've got another site that I'm not going to tell you where it is. Right. So I'm going to crack on with the details on the screen, and we're going to crack on now, and let's see where tonight leads us. So obviously last night ended about 5 minutes past the hour, 10. So we won't be doing anywhere near like that tonight. This is a nice sort of easy one, and I'm just making sure I got everything in front of me, and so everything's sort of lined up. So right, so okay, everything's good to go. Right, okay, everything's sort of linked tonight, and we're just going to, where are we? Right, share. There's new stuff. There's new stuff that I can use on Zoom, but like app applications, which I haven't even started even working it out. There's new Zoom stuff, and as you know, when there's new stuff, hang on a minute. How the hell has that happened? That's the app thing. Oh my God, it's gone wrong. Stop. I pressed the wrong button, Andy. I don't know what the hell that was. It went on to an app. God. Right. So okay. So talking about apps, that was like a gaming app, wasn't it? Right. So okay, let's just try and get in control of this now. Right. And right tonight, right, we've got all of these images, right, which is quite a lot of stuff to go through. Right. So we're first of all going to be looking at Ireland. And I've got my cup of tea in front of me, which is great. And the one thing about the discoveries in Ireland is that it seems that there is loads of things being found in Ireland at this minute, and usually when they're excavating motorways.
Yeah.
So it's when how do I start with this? I don't know who that is. Can one of you add them on? I actually, when Henry gave me this information, he said, "Look, there's new stuff being found in Ireland. It's a Neolithic house," and I just thought, "Hang on a minute, how many more Neolithic houses are we going to find in Ireland?" And whoever's just joined us, is that you, Henry? Richard, who is it?
Margaret.
Oh, it's Margaret.
Yeah, I've just,
Oh, right. Have you added her on?
yeah, there's nothing coming up.
Well, okay.
There we go.
Right. Is that Margaret?
Yeah.
Margaret. Hello.
Connecting to audio a minute.
All right then. Okay. Right. We'll come back. We'll come to Margaret in a moment. So as I was saying, we've got lots of houses being found in Ireland of the Neolithic date, and I was reading through this and I thought we've done this before, but we hadn't. And this news only came out on the 7th of September, last Thursday. And strangely enough, that's a reconstruction of one of the buildings that they found in Ireland. So archaeologists working on new motorway route in Cork unearth, obviously Cork's in the south, unearth remains of early Neolithic home. And I just thought, right, here we go again. But as I was reading through it yesterday, I realised it's another one that's been found. Now, that reconstruction to me doesn't look right. But it's rather interesting, and I said this yesterday, that when we look at the Neolithic period, we used to think that, you know, the Neolithic period, a few huts here and there, they're probably rectangular, right? But now over the past 2 decades, the information about the Neolithic period and the Mesolithic period is massive. So one of the things that we used to say, and this comes in to part of the lecture later on, and I'm trying to link all of this in. One of the things that we used to say, that they were like type sites. So obviously, if it's a rectangular building, it's probably Mesolithic. But now rectangular buildings can be seen in all prehistoric periods. So if it's a circular building, it's got to be Iron Age. Well, we know there's circular buildings in the Bronze Age. In fact, there are loads of circular buildings in the Bronze Age. And there's also circular buildings in the Mesolithic period and the Neolithic period. And actually, weirdly enough, there are also circular buildings in the Roman era as well. So there's no such thing as type sites. When we think about, for example, building massive buildings, we always think about the Neolithic period. But in Scotland, we got the massive brocks. So you know, things are changing, things are evolving. Last night I said, right, we're going to be doing the Nessa Brodga next week, definitely. And the reason why, Margaret, the reason why I haven't done the Nessa Brodga tonight, and hopefully you've got the plan in front of you, is that I was not very well yesterday, and I'm not very well at all today either, but I'm much better than I was. I couldn't hardly speak yesterday, but the lecture went very well. So I set up 5 sites that I want to do tonight, and in 3 weeks' time, we're actually doing the big one, Stonehenge, finally. And then in about 4 or 5 weeks' time, we'll be starting to go into the Bronze Age, because I think we've done quite a lot of the Neolithic period. We've done farming, we've done buildings, we've done pottery, we've done monuments, we've done causewayed enclosures, we've done loads of barrows, all these different types of things. So tonight is a bit of a mismatch of different sites that are of quite a bit quite interesting, which all these sites definitely are. So this area of Cork that we're talking about, along the motorway, along the length of the M28 motorway, they've actually excavated, wait for it, 50 archaeologists have excavated an area of 50,000 linear meters of archaeological test trenches at 38 different sites. There's quite a lot going on in Ireland, and millions. Well, I would say to have 50 archaeologists on site over this period of time, millions of pounds are being spent on the archaeology. So to give you an idea of square meterage, that's 102,000 square meters of land that's been examined by archaeologists. The building that they found within this landscape dates probably going back to maybe about 6,000 years ago. And this is a Neolithic building. This is a reconstruction of one of those said Neolithic buildings. And it's in my notes, it says, and this is an Irish Examiner, it says it was one of the houses examined, one of a number of houses of Neolithic date that we know about in the area, and they're still coming in. And this, wait for it, is the 9th such house excavated in County Cork. Basically, these houses are being excavated in County Cork over the past few months, within the past few months and the past year or so. So in other words, what we've done in archaeology, we've expanded what we know of the Neolithic period massively. This looks absolutely huge, and I'm not happy with this reconstruction at all. It's probably likely that they were buildings very similar to this one. But what I'm seeing with the building that I have built is that building a house on stilts is far more viable than building a house directly on the ground. And the reason why, well, I've got it's dry. End of. It's dry. We've got a roof on it. We've got walls on it. Well, we've got UPVC windows, but that's not the point. The design is based on actually on the Neolithic building, not a Bronze Age building, because my building is 6.5 meters in diameter. It's absolutely bloody huge, and we've got 45 planks of wood on the floor, lengthways, and it's taken us weeks to sort of get them ready. The point is, right, with all of this said, they might actually find roundhouses as well. The houses that have been finding so far are rectangular buildings, and this is all associated with herding. This is all associated with the emergence of a massive reliance upon agriculture, and obviously that sets Ireland within this lecture today. And we will come on to Margaret in a moment, because I'd like to hear from Margaret. Margaret, we were all worried about where you were yesterday, but we'll have a quick chat in a sec. Now, what I thought, that's a site in Orkney. What I thought is that I just wanted to sort of give you a raison d'etre, because I saw this map and I thought this is interesting. And one of the things that we are finding is that lots of Neolithic sites, particularly Neolithic and Mesolithic sites, for example, in Ireland, are found along the coast. And there's Limerick and Shannon. Obviously, the Shannon estuary actually marked on the map there. We're getting lots of stuff in Shannon as well. And obviously the north, and lots of these are in coastal margins, but lots of the stuff that we're finding in the Neolithic period is actually in land associated with motorways and so on. I was disinherited from my talking about Ireland being connected with mainland Britain as far back as 7,000 years ago. But most archaeologists completely disagree with that. But where I'm getting my stuff from is archaeologists saying it was definitely connected to mainland Britain. But the idea that Ireland was connected to mainland Britain 7,000 years ago is slowly going out the window. It's probably likely that it was impossible to have been connected to mainland Britain. It's more likely thousands of years before that. And I'm going to show you that plan, but I thought, right, we're now doing the Neolithic. We're at the end of the Neolithic, and obviously at that point we were not connected with Ireland at all. But food for thought. Now, what we're going to do is this is Margaret. So Margaret, talk to us. She doesn't want to talk to us.
Yeah. Hello.
Margaret, have you got any news for us this week? And tell us why you weren't there last night.
Well, I had an old school friend and her daughters from Tasmania came to stay. So that's why they only just left today. And I did send you a message saying I would try and get on tonight instead, but I didn't expect to see young Andy here as well.
Young Andy.
Yeah, I've been found out. Yeah.
Well,
Tuesday group and joining Wednesdays instead, do you think?
Everybody's saying on a Tuesday night that Andy's abandoned them because he hasn't been there for the past 3 weeks. I didn't want to tell him that he's joined the elite group on a Wednesday. But then again, I tell them on a Tuesday they're the elite group anyway. So we're moving on. It's not very good. Margaret and Andy, I tell them on a Wednesday every single week that you are my guinea pigs, and that's why the lecture's gone so long, because we tie out all the material.
Oh, okay.
So it sort of makes our Wednesday flow much quicker, because I'm cutting things out that may not have worked, or that's not the point. I'm cutting things out that we may have talked a bit too long on and things like that. So
okay.
So you were out ad-libbing yesterday, and you're ad-libbing today.
the bloody problem was I wasn't ad-libbing at all. It was just the problem is there was so much material to go through yesterday,
Yeah.
and one of the sites that we saw yesterday, it was like, oh wow. But then again, there were two sites that we saw yesterday, oh wow. And one of the things that I explained this morning, and Margaret has not heard this, Andy's not heard this, and Goff's not heard this, but Anne and Richard has. However, I want to tell you something that I've learned, which is based on my own animals. Now, I was teaching on Monday, and actually, while we're going to go off is Richard and Anne already know this, but the other three of you don't, and anyone else online doesn't either. So what we basically what I said this morning, as you all know, I've got Borreray sheep, right? And Borreray is a little island up by St Kilda, way off. And my Borreray sheep, right, have actually got that coloration. My male is like that, and my female's like that. Now, we're not, you know, it's just, what the friggin' hell is he doing sheep for? These are ancient sheep. These are Neolithic sheep, right? And they're actually quite small. My male, right, I can actually carry him. And my females I can carry. The point is, let's get to it. On the 30th of July, my female ewe was born, right? 30th of July. And I keep saying to people, my ewe is my baby, my lamb is like 2 or 3 months old. But time has gone so slow. I'm wrong. My baby lamb, my female lamb is only 7 weeks old, right? And she's actually 2/3 the weight of the mum, right? There's a point with this. On Monday, in the lecture, I was talking about lots of bones, sheep bones being found around 500 years AD at a site at Dinas Palace in the Vale of Glamorgan, right? And the archaeologists couldn't work out why the sheep had been butchered before they were mature and before they could carry lambs, right? And I got the answer, because only after 7 weeks is my lamb 2/3 the weight of the mother. So I believe that in 2 months' time, my baby lamb, which won't be a baby then, will be the same size as their mum. It's a pet basically, but however, because we're trying to keep this breed alive, there's not thousands, there's hundreds on the planet. That's all. And so I basically worked out that the reason why they were slaughtered was why keep them alive after 4 months when they're the size, and that's the only size they're going to be. Because if you bring them on again, when you're feeding them, it'll go into the horns. You don't want the horns, you want the flesh, right? And their parents can actually give you more lambs. So the point is, and actually Borrays can give you more than one lamb a year. So the point I'm trying to make is that I found out by inference from my own sheep what was actually happening in an archaeological record, because another archaeologist didn't know it when he was writing the report. So all these little things really help up to give you a really sound picture of archaeology, and particularly the Neolithic period. Now, this site itself is, we're now going over to Orkney, and what we're going to do is we're on the island of Sanday. Now, I've been to the island of Sanday. I stayed there, and I've been there several times, and we went there on an archaeology recovery trip, and this was in 2016. So that's the last time I actually had a trip there. I've been back to Orkney twice because I was doing my master's degree there. However, on the island of Sandow, there's a point to be made with the Neolithic site. Now, there's lots of issues to be made with this. So what we're going to do, we're going to flip through a few images, and I'm going to go over to my text, which is nicely in front of me now. And there we go. So this site itself is actually being eroded into the sea, and where they started excavating it because it would be gone in a few years, right? So what they did, they actually they did the type of archaeology which is destructive archaeology. So that was presented to them, and then they took this circular bit away, and then they found more. It was actually in phases, right? So they removed it because it was actually in phases. Archaeology is destructive. They had to remove that to see what was underneath it, and you can see another phase sticking out where you've got the curve there. So they thought, right, there's more phases here. So this is what we do in archaeology. If we really want to know if this site's going to be destroyed, we really get to grips with it. But there's something massively fascinating for me with this site. This site is undoubtedly intact. However, they didn't find a human bone in there at all, which for me is very important, because Andy knows what I'm going to say. Were these all used for burial? Did they start off as burial sites? In this one, there were no bones in it at all, except there was a cremation. That's it. One cremation. That's it. I'm going to build this whole thing for one cremation, right? And it's used over a period of time, a huge period of time. So again, Neolithic. Everything tonight is Neolithic, right? So this is the landscape. This is the windy landscape that you've got, right? This is we're on Tresness, right? And this is what we're looking at, the landscape of archaeology. And one of the things at Tresness is that the archaeology itself is being eroded in the bay into the sea. This is Neolithic Bronze Age site. And do you know what, Andy? Right, when I was coming to the end of my master's degree, I was said, why didn't you excavate at the Ness of Brodgar? I haven't got time, I said. And then another lecturer said, one of the preeminent Neolithic specialists in the world, Professor Colin Richards, he said, oh, why did you come out to my excavation on Sunday? I also said no. I think there was a lot going on back then in 2017, 2018, but I didn't actually go on the excavation, and I would have seen all this. And one of the thing is that the archaeology has been really eroded into the sea. So that's, you can see high water mark, it's covered. right? So they can only excavate at these sites in the summer months because the water is very, very choppy. And the only way to get to Sanday, as you can tell, is by ferry. Now you've got the island of Sanday there. If we zoom in there, that island there is Rousay. And in fact, the pottery that's found on Sanday is very similar to the pottery found on the island of Rousay. The way of building is very similar to Sanday as it is on Rousay. And basically, back in the Neolithic period, oh yes, lots of these islands were connectable. They you could walk to them, right? There was either a little trickle of water between them, or they were landlocked. It was all together. This was one big landmass, and we've got we've got our friend, he wants to be known. We've got our friend Jarden online as well. Welcome, Jarden. We're on the flow looking at Neolithic sites. And so this, when we think about the island and we think about connection, the Neolithic period is definitely about connection. It's definitely about movement, but it's definitely about the same people in lots of areas, right? We're not talking about people in Orkney didn't come from Germany, right? And they didn't come from France. Right. So back to looking at this, you can see there in the front that there is being eroded away, right? And so they're going into this, and there it is. So you've got this little bit of a reveal. I told them everybody last night. I'll say the same thing. When I went to Shetland, I can't say if there's a Shetland link tonight or not, but there we go. When I went to Shetland, we stayed there for a few days, and the one university lecturer said, "Come over here, come at the back of the building and have a look at this." So I was there. It was me, Michelle, and he said, "Look at that," and there was a beautiful broch being eroded into the sea. And I said, "Oh my God, this is." He said, "There's loads of these. We can't record them all." And down on the ground was the base of this beautiful Iron Age pot. And I said, "Look, Simon, I can't just leave this to you." And he said, "No, you can't. Take it with you and use it as an example to show your students in the future." I will show that object to you when we're doing Iron Age lectures, right? A piece of Iron Age pottery from a broch from Shetland. So this site being excavated, being eroded into the sea, and as we're looking there, as they're excavating, they're being excavated in 2019, nothing but a stone mound. And this, as you can see, is very similar to Rousay, but it's actually much smaller. Instead of being this length, and this itself is so much shorter. So this site is being revealed and is of exceptionally well preserved. And my notes tell me that it's not actually as well built as this one, right? But then again, I'm looking and thinking, hang on a minute, they look very similar, right? Henry's just joined us, Richard, so if you could add him on, please. So this site itself is very similar to the ones that you can see on the island of Rousay. Now, this is actually 1.6 meters tall inside, and it's very well preserved. We can actually clearly see there that these have either come from the side or they've actually collapsed in from the roof. So we can presume that this is actually a stone corbelled roof. Maybe not. But I'm gonna be really crass now. Who frigging cares? Because we now know that there was enough timber on the Orkney Isles to actually build roofs from the Nessa Brodgar excavation, which we will look in detail next week. We've got timber being found. There was timber on Orkney to build roofs, right? So whether it was timber, whether it was stone, it had a roof on this one, like the one that we've got the archaeological evidence from Nidhow. So there we go. So what this is, as we go back to the other image, what you can clearly, and actually the entrance is not where we think it is, because, hang on, that there, and if we, that bit there, is being eroded by the sea. So the entrance is actually here. That's the entrance. And it's actually 5 compartments. There's 1 compartment there, another compartment there, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 compartments there, and that is the entrance. So, and that's the other thing as well, is when as archaeologists, we're only sometimes left with half a picture, and therefore, if this had been eroded away, the archaeologist would think that this was the entrance. But no, we've got enough to tell us that that was in fact the entrance there. And if we move this away, we clear that. And nice of you to join us, Henry. We've already done Ireland, so sorry about that. And so what you've got a clear understanding, a clearer sight, a clearer expression. And obviously erosion into the sea, you've lost big chunks of this site anyway, but we've got a good idea of what this site is. Now, let's talk like the archaeologists who were excavating at the site. And we're going to talk like the archaeologists excavating at the site. And how we're going to do it, we're going to basically say, what do you expect to find in these things? We expect to find human remains. Love it. Well, here we go. As they've moved that there, well, obviously they've moved, if we go back, all that's been moved, right? So what they've done, they've then got through that layer, and then they keep digging, and they've gone down to there, right? And now, although they anticipated inhumation, human remains, they thought they were going to find them. They had not survived, or they weren't there in the first place. There wasn't a single human bone in this site. Now, we do know that, well, I'm gonna hedge a bet, right? All my experience with archaeology on Orkney, if there were human bones there, you would at least find something, right? You wouldn't find nothing. Then you would find some indication of a human bone if there had been human bones there. Must have been, right? So somebody might turn around and say, that's not fair, Karl. Look at Sutton Hoo. Look, but you've got evidence, you've got staining, you've got evidence of teeth at Sutton Hoo with the sand. It's not that type of acid, right? They did actually find 1 single cremation deposit, right? But that may have been later. And also polished stone balls, right? Now, one thing, you know, sometimes when I'm doing the lecture on a Tuesday, I can basically make up the problems that I've had on a Tuesday by not having the illustrations, having to go on Google. But now this is very interesting. When they were excavating, they found in there, among the mass of stone tools inside the structure, were 130 scale knives. Now, what are scale knives, right? Scale, S-K-A-I-L-L, is actually scale as in Skara Brae, right? So what, oh, hang on a minute, what we do is we type in, not my sheep again, oh, don't they? Do you know what? I look at my sheep and I love them. I spent loads of time with them. And scale knives, there we go. Got those. So we go down the screen. Those are scale knives, right? They found 130 of these at Sanday at this site. But do you know they're named after the scale knives from Skara Brae. There's another link. 130 of these were actually found. It's the form, it's the shape. Now, this is where I go awry with the archaeology. They found these, and the word I use in absence of evidence, but I don't agree with this. They say, we're going to agree with the first bit. A coarse stone tool usually found in domestic contexts and associated with butchery, right? Okay, fair enough. That makes sense. But the archaeologists say that, in fact, these bones, their very presence of, that's that again, these bones, these stones, the very presence of these stones within this monument indicates that they were used for defleshing and preparing corpses for burial. And I've got umbrage with that, because it's just like, well, okay, why would you chuck why would you chuck these items into the area where you're defleshing the bones? Surely they would be outside the site. And, you know, why would they be in there? It's very odd that you've got 130 of these in there. It's not a small thing. And we've got 2 people online saying hello. So hello guys online, Black Dog and Jarden again. So going back to the images again off this, because we've got to then go to we've done the two Orkney sites together. We've done the Irish site, but I want to go off there, and we want to go back to the images, and we want to flow there, and we love it. And they're basically saying again about the excavations. The excavation suggests that this had been constructed over four or five phases. And there's loads of build here, right? And what are the dates associated with this site? Well, we're really struggling, but it's at least beyond 4,500 years ago. There's evidence of burning, right? But obviously, if you're going to burn human remains, you're not going to burn it in here, and you would find evidence of that. It's like somebody saying that if you want to murder somebody, be an archaeologist, because you'll be able to dispose of the body, right? But I know full well that that's not exactly true. Even if you burn human remains, there is some trace. There are minerals. There are certain trace acids. There are certain trace elements to human remains, and they have not been found in that other than one cremation. So you'll be glad to hear I'm not killing anyone. I'll ask Andy to do it instead. So this monument as well, quickly about this monument, we've obviously got Elise joined us as well online. This monument as well was actually later used into the Bronze Age, and being used into the Bronze Age, this was used up to around 3,700 years ago. So this site has probably been in use for 2,000 years. Massive. So it's a really interesting, really important site. And go on quickly.
I just imagine that, you know, somebody's cleared them. Somebody over the centuries has cleared them. It might have been Christians, you know.
Well, the problem is, right, Andy, Anne, you were doing so well with the first bit. It can't be Christians because you've got Bronze Age layers on top, right? Bronze Age people were not Christians, right? So you have actually said something very useful, right? And what you've said, which is very, very useful, is that this had been, okay, in absence of evidence, right? The point is, in absence of evidence, if they were cleaned out on a regular basis, why are the scale knives in there? Why are the two round balls in there? Are they taking the human remains out and replacing them with these objects? Okay, maybe they are, but you know what I said about, you know, I said an archaeologist murdering somebody is the best person to do it because he knows how to dispose of the body. Well, I know full well that there would be one or two fragments of bones in there. There isn't. There are no bones in there at all. There'd be a little phalange, that there would be a tooth, there'd be something that's not there. And also, Anne, I'm not shooting you down, Anne, that's a really good suggestion, but the evidence isn't there. And Anne, listen to this, right? Let's be a bit, when they excavated Tinkinswood burial chamber, John Ward excavated Tinkinswood burial chamber in 1914. He recovered up to 50 sets of human remains. Well, since they've excavated there, I think it was in 2009, 2010, they found more human remains there. Well, John Ward would have surely recovered them all. However, they were found outside. Oh, okay. Well, John Ward was a good archaeologist. He found everything. You don't need to be a good or bad archaeologist, right? But unfortunately, bones find their way into the stonework. And that's not what we do as archaeologists. We don't fiddle around in stonework, which is set in the walls. We look at the layers on the ground, and the point is I'm going to make is that even John Ward left some of the bones inside the burial chamber after his intense excavation, because over the years people come up to me and said they were rooting around the walls in Tinkerswood burial chamber and they found bones. which they are then handed to the museum. So even with the very intense archaeological excavation, it's going to be easy to miss things, right? However, this was an intense excavation here. They would have found something lying in a crack in the ground, rather on the floor, in the horizontal layer, right? Things fall in between gaps on the floor. We're not talking about the walls, John Ward, where bones were found on the wall. We're talking about the ground. Nothing's been found there, which for me is very, very interesting. So this site being eroded into the sea here. One of the things that it was quite an offer, right? Before I inserted myself into doing a degree at the University of Highlands and Islands, one of the doctors he said, "Oh, why didn't you bring a group up, right, and spend a week up here excavating one of the sites that's being eroded around the coast?" I actually thought he was smoking something, but he wasn't smoking anything. Because their archaeology is so under threat. They don't have enough archaeologists to excavate it and cover it all, right? So that's the point. They don't have enough archaeologists to excavate everything. So you've got the danger of things being lost. So that's where that came in, right? So one quick thing on the beaches is obviously these wonderful monuments, very similar to the sites which are near Stennes, which we'll be mentioning Stennes next week, which is near the Nest of Brodgar. There's a little settlement called Barnhouse, which has buildings like this, right? You can see them. They've excavated. They're like this at Barnhouse. They're exactly like this at Barnhouse, with like a little square in the middle for a hearth with stone alignment. They say that Barnhouse was a bit like Skara Brae, but Barnhouse lots of stones had been taken away for reuse elsewhere. And the point is that this type of building is all over Orkney, probably because people were able to walk back and forth to these places. There they are excavating, right? Let's see which archaeologist that is. I don't recognize him. And right, okay. So right. This is the next link. I told you there was links.
Sorry, I
There
thought
are the links. And I've got to get my book, right? And my book itself, right? As I'm getting my book, I have got this is actually more later types of Neolithic pottery, but then again they could be in earlier periods as well. And I can't see Jack Elephants in here now, so I've got to put a light on. Okay, right, here we go. There we go. Right, okay, light, action. Right, good. And there we go. Sorted. Right. There's a link here, right? Because one of the places we'll be mentioning briefly, well, not briefly, for about 10 minutes. One of the places that is mentioned in this array of pottery we'll be doing, I do believe, sometime, whether it's the next one or the one after next. So the one there on the left is Fengate pottery, which has actually been found near the site at Fengate, which is in Peterborough, which is just north of London, so in Cambridgeshire. So that one there, has actually been found. Has been found at West Kennet Long Barrow. It obviously originates. It's been found in the West Country as well. So that type of pottery, Neolithic, that type of pottery later sort of grooved ware there. The grooved ware that is to be found all over the country. That's earlier pottery, but it probably found in a later context. Lots of the walls of this pottery are pretty thick. Number C there is Peterborough style pottery. You've named it. You've got it. It was found in Peterborough itself, which is actually Fengate. It's just near Peterborough anyway. So D, Rudston pottery. Yes, you've worked it out. Rudston pottery, it originates, or the form originates in Rudston, Humberside way. And the E is actually named after the village of Brecara, and that's actually from Kintyre in Scotland. So one of those bits of pottery there, one of those types of pottery is a site that we'll be mentioning, because that site that we'll be mentioning is going to be a very important site that we look at in the Bronze Age, but we look it up in our Neolithic context, and it tells you more about this type site stuff. Don't always go with what you're told. Oh, good. The site that the site that I mentioned in the pottery there hasn't come up next. It's after this one, right? Okay, I'll tell you, it's Fengate. We'll be looking at an excavation at Fengate. Yesterday, I chucked this at everybody and I said, has anyone been to this site? Right? Has anyone been there? Does anyone ever been to this site? There it is. There it is. It's known as Stony Littleton, right? And you know what I'm like with barrows. I tear them apart. I say the reconstruction's wrong. This is wrong, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I will say is that is a cross section of what it looked like approximately circa 1817. That's what it looked like inside. But you can clearly see on the left there, which is the entranceway, that the front there has been reconstructed. But you know what, guys? It tells you it's been reconstructed. Bingo. So I'm not going to get upset with anybody. When somebody reconstructs the past, they need to tell us. As Andy knows, if he goes to the Roman fort at Hard Knot, it's got a little sign saying that the bit above this black line is being reconstructed and a bit below hasn't. Am I right or am I wrong, Andy? So there we go. So let's look at this site and let's bring it alive. This is the Stony Littleton Long Barrow site. I fell in love with this site because I'd never, and what has been reconstructed is the stone on the front. And actually, the way I actually believe that the reconstruction is slightly wrong, because I like to feel that the reconstruction should be more. Basically, these reconstructions are reconstructions. They're not always necessarily right. So what we've got, I believe the form was a little bit more like this, right? Basically sort of irking back, sort of keep going a little back. All the stones around the outside, it looks like have been reconstructed. All the facing here has been reconstructed, right? And the reason why I'll get that idea from is if we go to the plan that has been drawn for us by the antiquarian archaeologist Karl-James when he excavated the site. You can clearly see at the front there on the left-hand side, there's no stones, and it looks like it may have been collapsed and so on. So back to when we look at the likes of Tinkinswood burial chamber, I believe that the reconstruction is very, very wrong there. And again, looking at this reconstruction, let's tell you a little bit more about Stony Littleton Long Barrow. And where the bloody hell is it, Carl? Show us. Okay. God, you're very demanding tonight. It's Andy, it is. He gives this sort of vibe that we've got to show him where these places are. So he can go there when he's visiting his daughter next. Andy, there it is. And Andy, when you're down next, maybe you could go via West Wales, and you could you could come and have a cup of tea with me, Andy. It's only a 2.5 hour detour, Andy. You won't do it anyhow. So
well, at least he's been offered tea.
I don't drink tea.
You don't drink tea?
No, only coffee.
Well, I knew that anyway. Right, yeah. Anyway.
Just testing me, yeah.
Yeah, because you were the Obstropolis one, that when we used to have classes in the institute, that you would insist that you had coffee with Claire.
Yep.
Anyway.
Well, he's actually moved the furthest away that you could ever be, really.
Yep.
Well, actually, I don't know what Andy, what were you going to say? Were you going to say anything, Andy?
I was going to say that illustration's beautiful. That's done of the original cutaway.
And it's
really
very accurate.
Yeah, it's cracking one, isn't it? Yeah.
It's very. I tell you what, we've been critical of Karl-James, and as Karl-James would have seen this looking out. He would have seen this.
Yeah.
This is from the back looking out, and that is cracking. I got to be honest with you. That is Karl-James at his best. I just heard a witch. Was that you, Anne?
No, it was me.
I heard there was a cackle then. What do you want, Margaret?
Cackle. I was just going to ask you something. I
Go
don't
for it.
cackle. How very dare you?
Dina does. Right, anyway. Right, go for it.
When you say reconstruction, can that also mean repaired? Is it the same thing, or is it more elaborate than a repair?
You know what? I'm gonna be true. I'm gonna be true to this lecture as I was last night. The guy, right. What I'll do, I'll go through this. I'll go through this in order. But when he sort of, it's more of a it's neither, to be honest with you, because this is what it looked like inside when Cole Hall was excavating, right? So when you actually look, the inside is more or less as it was. What has been, it's not really repaired if you're trying to show it. That as it curves out on the left, as it curves out on the right, that's what's been not really rebuilt. If I don't believe it ever looked like that, that doesn't actually look right. But what the reconstructing person has done, they put a plaque there, and it says, "I have done this," and that is very helpful. And I'm very grateful that he has, because he's told us what's been reconstructed and what hasn't. Again, that word reconstructed. Problem is conserved. I would say that's the better word. It's been conserved. This site itself. Stony Littleton Long Barrow, and I'm loving this tonight, by the way. It's really flowing well. This tomb itself is classed as a Cotswold 7 group tomb. All Cotswold 7 group tombs had what you would say a courtyard in front, and you'd have the bull's horns come out, right? Well, I don't like this reconstruction but right, I might not like the reconstruction, but it's telling us it's been it's been put together, right? I believe it was more flush than that, and it that's what I feel, right? But anyway, we're getting too mixed up in it. What I'm saying, Margaret, I'm happier with this one. It sits easier than any of the other two. Well, for example, West Kennet Long Barrow, massive reconstructions. Wayland Smithy, massive reconstructions. Tinkered Wood Burial Chamber, massive reconstructions. Avebury, massive reconstructions. The list could go on. The Binkelly in North Wales, reconstructions. Barclay the Garris, reconstructions in North Wales. Pentre Ifan reconstruction. So not so much Pentre Ifan, but lots of these have seen lots of reconstruction. This site itself was deemed to be one of the finest of its example of barrow examples. In 1882, it was one of the first protected ancient monuments in Britain, alongside Pentre Ifan in West Wales, alongside a few other sites across Britain, right? And this site itself, being protected, was a site that was a type site. It is actually a type site. It's like we've also done Bellis Knapp a few weeks back. When we looked at Bellis Knapp, that we really didn't talk about the reconstruction and stuff there. That really didn't look right, but this does look right inside. It doesn't look Purcell. When I say Purcell, it looks right. It sits easy, right on my chest. I'm fine with it, and I'm not going to be happy when I do Stonehenge. I hate Stonehenge because there's been lots of reconstruction. But I like this. I like the plan. I like the way that we're brought into a monument that is more real as it was. This dates probably to roughly 5,500 to 6,000 years ago. In the beginning of the 1800s, when it was excavated, they found several remains of several individuals. What we are going to say is the plan's good. They didn't muck around with it. And unfortunately, we don't have enough human remains to tell us about this monument. Inside, this itself inside is about 13 meters inside. Now, if I went in here, I'd start to feel claustrophobic after 5 or 6 meters, right? It's 13 meters inside. But if you get a really good day, you can actually see your way in, right? There it is. And actually, there's an image without the flash, right? Hang on a minute. Where is it? There. That's the inside without the flash. So you can basically make your way in, and you can make your way out. Your eyes would climatize to that anyway. So if we go to if we go to here, right, I'm going to be very wary of time. We're not going to have a break, okay? Otherwise, I'm not going to get the big one done, right? But this is a big one. So estimates of the actual frontage, it may have been it may have been 10 meters on the front, it may have been 15 meters on the front, really depending on what you're talking about. The mound may have been up to 33 meters long, 100 feet long. When you do it in feet, 100 feet long sounds a lot longer, but 42 foot long as you wander down the passage in there. One thing that you can clearly see is that as you're going down, you've got a chamber on the left, a chamber on the right, and you've got 4 sets of these, and you've got the end chamber itself. I'll just mention anyone on YouTube, if they want to say something in the chat box, they can, and don't forget to like and subscribe. So as you're looking at this, it's very likely there were numbers of these within the landscape, and it overlooks a brook, which is 200 meters to the north and west of the barrow. It sort of overlooks a brook. And one thing I would clearly say, one thing that I have explained, but maybe not have done a sketch on it. There's a little bit more to look at this before we go on. And the name takes its name from the local farm, Stony Littleton Farm. One thing I want to explain, I'm going to keep this image on there. I'm not going to go to the box. I'm going to, oh, there we go. And let's annotate. I've mentioned the phenomenon before, and this is no such difference. So if we get a little bit of landscape drawn here, right, we get a little bit of an undulating landscape like that. What they would do is gently put the chamber a little bit like that. So if we draw that, so what if this is a mound, right? You might sort of chuck it there just slightly above the brow, right? A long tracing mound. It might be any angle, right? So as you're there, you could see line of sight. You can see it, right? However, as you go down the hill, where's it gone? As you go there, where's it gone? We don't know where it is. And this is the great mystery of these monuments. It's an illusion. Oh my God, we can see it a kilometer away, but we can't see it until you're on it there. You can't see it again. And this is the phenomenon with lots of these things. I see this with Tingerswood Burial Chamber. I see this with, you don't see it with Wayland Smithy because the landscape's changed. Yeah, you see it with this site. You see it with West Kent Long Barrow, right? You see this phenomenon, and it repeats itself, and it's almost as if they want this sort of illusion, this mirage, this monument that you're aiming for. This thing that you're aiming for disappears, and then eventually you're on it. Some things in life are like that. You know, the idea of life. What you're aiming for, you don't ever get until you actually get there at the last minute. How many times has that actually happened? The woman of our dreams, Andy, I bet you just met her at the last minute, you know? And the woman of my dreams, I met her at the last minute, right? I'm sure Anne feels the same, but it's like a metaphor for these monuments. You see them just at the last minute, and they're there. It opens itself out, the mystery of these monuments. And one thing from a distance usually is this is actually made of limestone. What limestone does when it's polished, there's a light to it. There's a light to freshly cut. It sort of glistens with all the minerals and stuff in it. That's what happens with limestone. It happens very much with chalk. When you look at the sites like Wayland Smithy, and you look at the Wiltshire site of West Kent Long Barrow, they're made of chalk, and you can see them glistening, gleaming in the distance. Follow the gleam. That's a Tennyson quote. Follow the gleam. He's talking about Arthur Hallam. He's talking about King Arthur. He's talking about the sword. Follow the gleam. It's very much in prehistory as well. This itself, I'm gonna basically say I'm gonna not do too much devil's advocate tonight. I'm gonna say this fits nicely into a burial monument. rather than a monument of any other class, right? And you're thinking, Carl, my God, you're actually saying this is clearly a burial monument. Yeah, it fits nicely. This one does fit nicely. Unlike other ones, other examples that we've done today, and other examples in the past, this fits nicely as clearly purposely built burial monument. And it may have actually been used for possibly a period of 5 or even 500 years or even 1,000 years, but we'll never know, because the human remains that were taken out there by Cole Hall have obviously got DNA contamination now. But what we do have is this brilliant plan, and we're very grateful for what Cole Hall has done. He's basically said what you're seeing now inside is what you see inside. Oh, thank you very much, Cole Hall. When we did Wayland Smithy, the plans of Wayland Smithy were completely different from what they are now. Inside, with this site, is as it is now. So there we go, thumbs up. Now, the tomb was originally opened in 1760 by a local farmer to obtain stone for road building. This is says 1760, but Cole Hall's excavating year in 1816, 1817. Now, that is there in 1816, 1817. So what did he remove? Do you know what he removed? He removed stone. And where was the stone? Well, the stone must have been this stuff on top. In other words, this must have extended a little bit further out, and it must have extended further out. It may have been a big mound, right? But all of this has been removed for the construction of a road. That's what the guy is removing in 1760. He's not removing this inside. He's actually so in other words, instead of an earthen mound on top of it, we can actually assume that it was a gravelly stone mound, which is the material was used for stone building in 1760. Could be very crude. These people didn't give a crap about prehistoric monuments in 1760, but they didn't damage the stone inside. And in fact, I've got to be honest with you, a person who's actually made pathways out of stone, and I've done dry stone walling. I wouldn't want to break up these Lias limestone slabs, right? Well, the best stone to have used would have been the stone used to make this mound. So, being excavated by Cole Hall and a chap by the name of John Skinner, Richard Cole Hall, John Skinner, 1816, 1817. Obviously, reports coming out. They've got a labourer working there as well. There's these two archaeologists, and there's a labourer working there called I can't get the name. It's Zebedee. It's Zebedee Weston. Yeah, that's a real name. They had a guy working there called Zebedee. I thought that was a made up name, but Zebedee was working there with them, so they were excavating the inside mainly. Obviously, we found it's described as several individuals' bones were found in there, including some of the bones which were actually burnt. Right. So. And somebody's actually rightfully saying online, maybe you're being too harsh on the reconstructor of 1858, in that maybe around the outside it was actually revetted. Maybe they removed the outline of the site. We will never know. But in 1858, the chap who is doing this sort of reconstruction, right, or rebuilding, right, and there is the little plaque. He's got a little plaque there. Love him to bits. And what we've got there is the plaque. I didn't actually, but this is the plaque he actually made. I've done the reconstruction. I've done this for people, which is great. Lots of the artifacts ended up in the Bristol City Museum and Art Gallery. I do know that one of the Bristol museums was actually bombed by the Luftwaffe in the Second World War. If the Luftwaffe was in any other period. But the Luftwaffe bombed the Bristol Museum in about 1941, 1942. And we talk about that a bit, that lots of the finds from the likes of Somerset, the Lake Village sites, and obviously Cornwall went up in smoke. And it's likely some of the finds from this site would have gone up in smoke, but I do believe some of the collection is still with us today. It's been in state care since 1884. and it's a site that English Heritage are extremely proud of. And there's a little car park associated with it. There's been geophysical surveys there in 1999 and 2000 by Cotswold Archaeological Trust. Now, again, looking at this site, looking at the archaeology, and if we sort of go back to the little bit of a plan, and I'm very aware. Oh, we're going to look at that for a moment. Not yet. Trapezoidal shape, interesting. We're talking about the standing stones inside, dry stone walling. Obviously, we know that it says conjectured restoration of 1857, 1858. Conjectured. That's very important. The word conjectured, and I'm glad we've got that. We know that. We know what's going on, and so trapezoidal shaped mound made of lias limestone, quarried very nearby blue lias. And there's also another stone being used, a forest marble quarried. I don't know what happened to the effect of the site or not. I don't know. But the material was collected within a 5-mile radius. That's interesting. You've got lias limestone nearby, but you've got a forest marble that's collected within a 5-mile radius. That's really interesting. And why? This monument was more important to the people in the area. It was more important to other people from outside the area. Usually we'd associate these monuments being constructed for the community, by the community, within the community. With a small community would have built this, but it looks like other people are bringing material into this site as if it's more important than just within a family setting, within that sense of a family setting. And this idea here, it could there have been a partial revetment of large stone around it that has been removed in 1858, not in 1858, in 1760. We shall never know. And obviously, where did that restoration stone come from? Because that must have come from somewhere. So that would have needed to have been brought in 1858. So I'm loving this site. The front up to 13 the front up to it said 15 meters in the front, or maybe it could have been less, 10 or 12 meters. And one last thing I'm going to say before we crack on. We've got two last things. We've got the ammonite to talk about, and we've got the other issue of this. And we're looking here, and we're looking down the gallery, the 13-meter long gallery, and it said that the passage and entrance are roughly aligned towards midwinter sunrise. But then again, the sun would have shone on here on a very bright sunny day. And it's described that this site almost looks from a distance as if it's sliding down the hill. But obviously getting close to it, that sort of illusion that it disappears. Let's look at that one other thing, right? Because again, being very wary of time, and we do want to finish by probably about 9:15. So I've got 35 minutes to try and get this to bed. That monument has an ammonite, basically a mold of an ammonite, right? So the ammonite that was actually used to create that came out of the rock when that was quarried the very day that they decided to use this in this entranceway of this ancient monument. And if we look again at the entranceway, let's go. There it is. It's on the left-hand side of the door. Okay, let's go back to that illustration. Oh, we just had it there. Let's go back to there it is. No, I've lost it again. Oh God, gee whiz. There. Now the point is that has been selected to be used in the door entranceway. It wasn't found. It wasn't quarried like that. As I say, that's the ribs are in there. That's not a stone that was used in building. That had just been found without the ammonite. The ammonite's been clearly removed from there and used somewhere else, right? And it sort of enters my mind that maybe the ammonite was in that stone when they actually built this chamber. I will never know, right? But that was special to them. They decided to face it outwards. And then, as we said last night, the idea of the spiral, the idea of the ever the ever never-ending spiral, right? The sort of the idea of as people call it, the Celtic knot, that sort of style, that sort of art form, rather than the people, the sort of style as an art form. This sort of this spiral is repeated over and over in the Neolithic world. However, this is real. This is for real. So what we're going to do now, we've got two other sites to look at, right? And the one site ties us back to some of the stuff that we've already looked at. And then we look at the other site that I'm thinking that nobody has ever seen in their lives. Because I've never seen it, and I've been to bloody Shetland and I never bloody saw the thing, which is a bit of a shame. And just think, Andy and Margaret, maybe one day if I'm ever up to doing excursions again, Shetland would be the place to go to. But not in next week. Again, looking into this site again, I've got to leave this one. I've got to leave this wonderful site. I'm loving it at Stony Littleton, Long Barrow, Somerset. And next, we're on to a set of human remains. It's a completely different site altogether. So let's just, and I'm glad I did this tonight because it's sort of done a load of sort of ticks and sort of dotted the I's in lots of ways. Now, these human remains are associated with the prehistoric Fengate site, which has been known about since the 1970s. We've got a few images. We've got this plan. We've got this. And we've got this. And we've got this. Right. So this is called a ring ditch, right? This could be used for a house, like in those Iron Age examples. It could be used for a ditch, for burial. But it's always thought that ring ditches are from the Bronze Age and they're associated with burials, but they could equally be associated with houses, right? So let's bring this together. Fengate, where is Fengate? There is Fengate. And Fengate will bring up again. I do believe that, I think it may have been Margaret or Anne had been to Fengate and the site of Flag Fen, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you've been there.
Yes, I've
Flag
been there.
Fen.
Dan has been there as well.
Well, when we do Flag Fen, as you know, it's really going to come up in our Bronze Age. It really, really is going to come up in the Bronze Age. So I'm just going to put something on charge, and hopefully I'll be having a cup of tea. So going back there, they thought that there was Bronze Age because it's a ring ditch. So an excavation being undertaken in advance of construction of new industrial units, which, if we go, is there. So this site was an area excavation thought known about since 1976, in 1978. And so basically they were excavating here, and they undoubtedly thought that B must be a Bronze Age site because of the way it's shown. It's the way it's portrayed, right? And it turned out to be Neolithic. It turned out to be a Neolithic site, indeed, a Neolithic site. In archaeology, sometimes this idea of type sites, so that sense of staining, right? That staining sampled. And obviously the coloration of this is very different. It's the same site, but obviously this image is a little bit older. So we've lost the coloration of the soil. This is within that landscape, which is like a ready soil, which is sort of a very iron rich soil there. And it's a very, very large site indeed. Right, very large site indeed. A late Neolithic ring ditch. Is this associated with a building? Is this associated with some kind of ceremonial site? Is this associated with some henge? Whatever this is associated with, this is one of those moments in archaeology that looking at things, because we think there's something by the shape, is old hat now. Very, very often, this was a phenomenon that came up this was a phenomenon, and again, Fengate pottery found here. That ties us in with something earlier on. When we think about archaeology, we think about, you know, if we go back to the late 1800s, everything that was defensive was a Roman fort. A hill fort was a Roman fort. Anything with banks and ditches, Maiden Castle, it was a Roman fort, right? Then we turned out that they weren't Roman. They were, in fact, Iron Age or another date. And as they're starting to look at this landscape, when we do go to Fengate and get an idea of the Fengate landscape, what we will then be also presented with is lots of research going back to the 1920s, sketches of ring ditches, which are not Bronze Age, which are in fact Neolithic. And we're looking here at this plan. We're looking at Neolithic houses. We're looking at settlements. We're looking at a landscape that's got Iron Age remains and Bronze Age remains, and lots of that Bronze Age material that Anne and Margaret would have seen when they went to the Flag Fen excavation. Now, folks, this is the Place de Resistance, a site that I believe none of you ever, I believe a site none of you knew ever existed. I've been to Shetland and my university lecturer didn't even mention it, right? I wish he had, because I could have said that I'd visited one of the 5 greatest Neolithic sites in Britain. Up until a few days ago, I never knew existed. So we go 1, we go 2, the build up 3, 4, and 5. That is a site on Shetland. And that is amazing, right? And I don't know if any of you have ever seen this image before. You've ever seen this site?
No.
But I never knew its existence.
It's a bit
No.
grayish, isn't it?
Oh my God, you're saying everything that they said last night. Yes.
Oh, okay.
That gives you an idea of scale, right? And I do believe the guy in green is actually my university lecturer, Simon Clark. And that gives you an idea of scale. It's not massive, but for me, if I was doing a list of 5 greatest prehistoric sites in Britain, whilst Shetland is still part of the British Isles, if it votes to leave to go with Norway, right? But this site itself, for me, is so well preserved. It's amazing, and they're explaining what this site is, and there it is. There it is. I love this when I looked at it. I just thought, oh my, this is something. And if somebody has said, look, Carl, I knew this was there, right? I've seen images of this. I'd say, well, I wish you had shared it with me 2 or 3, 4 years ago. So when I know a little bit about Shetland archaeology because it was part of my master's degree. I've visited sites in Lerwick. I visited the Mesolithic site. I've visited some of the Brochs. I've been to the Broch and Mouser. I've been to Scatness. I've been to Giles Hoff. Giles Hoff and Scatness will be sites that we will be mentioning. And so as I was pondering over trying to get myself to prepare this lecture tonight, yesterday, and I thought I don't want to do the Ness of Bodger because I just wasn't well enough to do it, and I thought, right, I want to do a site in Shetland. So I typed in Shetland archaeological sites, Neolithic archaeological sites, and I hadn't seen an image of this yet, right? I hadn't seen this, and it says Shetland's Neolithic period falls a little bit later than ours. Probably starting roughly about 5,500 years ago. Ours began, well, my Neolithic began roughly about 8,000 years ago, but there you go. and is characterized by changes, massive changes, and the economy changes, the changes in building. There you go. There's one of them, on a big scale. Shetland being more isolated than other places, but as we know, we've got places like St Kilda, the island of Borray, Soy, way out off the Hebridean coastline. This is in that same ilk, but obviously Shetland is much bigger than those islands, much bigger landscape. So this period itself, the arrival of massive change, lots of farming, and it says, some of my favourite remnants of Neolithic Shetland are the standing stones that punctuate the landscape. Yeah, there are lots of them. Further up on Unst, there's scatters of standing stones, and then I read the words, Stannydale Temple is a must see. Oh yeah, is it? And I scrolled down the screen, and it says, set in the heart of Shetland's west mainland, a short walk takes visitors into Neolithic Shetland and back in time at least 4,000 years. The heel-shaped megalithic structure or temple, the only one of its kind in Shetland, in Britain, remains shrouded in mystery and intrigue, tucked into the empty landscape. And I just thought, God, I looked at this and I thought, I'm loving this. I really, really am. Tucked into the landscape, there it is. There's nothing there. But there is something there. There's actually, you can't see them on this aerial view, but around this landscape, there is actually, there's about 20 mounds which indicate a village around this site. It's so out of place. It really, really is. It's so out of place in everything that I've seen in Neolithic archaeology. It's not a henge monument. It's very, very different. A little gate leading into it. And as somebody said, look at the grass there. Yeah, because Heritage Scotland basically really looks after these sites. They're compared to Cadw. Cadw are a laughing stock compared to Scottish Heritage. So this site itself, the Stannydale, it's classed as a temple, right? And you can basically see why they think it looks like a temple. It is located in a field, a bloody big field, near the village of Stannydale, and it's only 21 miles away from Lerwick. I tell you what, Shetland is one of the places that you can hitch lifts, because I can remember we were in Lerwick one day, and they only have 2 buses a day to the bottom part of the island. So we could have either have waited until 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, I would say, or because the last bus was at 5, we missed it. So we managed to hitch 3 lifts all the way back. It was great. We could have hitched a lift here, and it says, right, I can't get this in my head, right? The archaeologists believe, and I can't disagree with this, it said that there was a roof on it. It said there was a roof on it, and that blows your mind. It really does blow your mind, and it argues that whether this was for an important person, which I would tick off no, or is it for communal use? Now, I'm gonna quote Martin Carruthers, Dr. Martin Carruthers, who's excavated a site known as the Carns on South Ronnersley, which is a Brock site. So he's the Brock expert. He says that Brocks were for community use, right? This is a very large, lower lying rock site. Brocks can be 12, 15 meters tall. This is, not that tall off the landscape. But this itself is about 7 meters wide and 12.5 meters long inside. Now, my house that I built, the diameter of it is 6.5 meters wide, and we've managed to roof it. So if I'd managed to roof it, this was roofable. So you've got a massive area. It's like It's a big, it's not massive areas, but it's quite a big area, really. So from those piers, I do believe that's where the size is actually taken. So the building lies in an area of about 8 acres. It's dry stone wall build. That's what they did in Shetland. And the area around it, there's not 20 mounds, there's 30 little miniature mounds. Lots of these miniature mounds have been sort of flattened because of clearance for agriculture. And Henry's basically said third world country, no internet. I don't know what that means. I don't know if
he hasn't got on the internet.
I don't know if Henry's left us. But carrying on. Obviously some of the mounds you can't really see them in the field, but those mounds have been excavated and they belong to houses which are associated with this massive structure. And we've got pottery associated with these buildings. We've got Neolithic pottery associated with these buildings. It's very likely as well that this landscape was still used as a community landscape as late as around 2,500 years ago. So this landscape is being used for a good 1,500, 2,000 years at least. 2,500 years or thereabout at least. So it's said, I don't have an image of one of these buildings because this actually threw me, to be honest, and one of these smaller buildings. And as we look at that was the first one that I got off the internet, actually. And it said that lots of these smaller buildings would had a sort of, the smaller houses both have a large central space, and within the walls of those buildings some smaller rooms very similar to what we're describing at Skara Brae, but they were spread out. They weren't all together, they were spread out. So the main building is heel shaped, as you can see, with a concave facade at the front there. Out there, they believe that there was some kind of forecourt. But beyond the facade, there was some kind of forecourt, which is here. That's the forecourt. It's probably arced out in some way, right? And so there's the entranceway as it leads in. And it's said that there's some kind of alcove there that you can't really make up, which was some kind of guard room. And the building is entered along this distance here, in there, and it's this passageway, and it sort of follows this with this massive sort of wall. It's again, you don't need to build a wall this thick. You really don't. But then again, if it's carrying timbers that are really big timbers, this would offset the weight. That's my only that's my only thing.
Are you saying that it's just in the central part the roof would be like coming up from that?
No, I'm gonna say that the roof is possibly coming off like this shape. Right?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And we do believe there was a ridge along here because these holes here, they found timber in these holes. Those things are holes, right? These black things are holes. So it's likely that the timber may have rested beyond the piers here. And this platform here would have offset the weight. Basically, the push into the stone that's required. It would have given quite an expanse of roof itself, from my experience. And again, there's so much more we could say about this site, but we're gonna we've got a few more minutes to look at this. So excavation have found 2 post holes. Those black things are post holes. And I'm going to disagree with my notes now, but I'm going to read out what it says. So excavations have found 2 post holes along the axis of the oval that each contain the carbonized remains of a spruce post, which was under 12 inches in diameter. Well, that doesn't seem very wide to me, right? Spruce, the species of spruce, Norwegian spruce, is not native to Scotland, and the post was presumably driftwood carried across from Scandinavia. And I'm going to be a bit sort of crude there, absolute crap, because you're not going to get that type of timber washed up on a regular basis, that scale, of that quality. It would have had to have been grown on Shetland. It would have had to have been grown. I don't go with this driftwood theory. I used to go with this driftwood theory when we used to talk about Skara Brae. There wasn't enough trees there. There may have been some trees used at Skara Brae, but we don't really have the evidence. The wood must have been washed up on the shore a mile away, blah, blah, blah. I don't go with that. The spruce must have grown on Shetland. And actually a tree that really likes Shetland today is actually sycamore. In the capital city of Lerwick, there's actually sycamores growing everywhere, from the fort all over the place. There's sycamores. I know sycamore is not an evergreen, right? A Norwegian spruce is, but it does take. Sycamore would probably need the right conditions as a Norwegian spruce. There's not many other trees in Orkney, Shetland at all like Orkney. They're gone. So I believe that. I believe that Norwegian spruce would have grown on the island, and the floor of the building found evidence of charcoal from Scots pine that may have been the charcoal that was used on timbers on the roof. And Scots pine is a native endemic tree to Great Britain and Shetland. There would have been Scots pines everywhere until they were all cut down. One of the things I used to ask my lecturer was why aren't there many more trees on Orkney and Shetland? And he said, well, there would be if we didn't have sheep wandering everywhere. And my sheep, right, have done so much damage to my trees growing, right? They're a walking nightmare. Unlike my Borere sheep that are lovely and cuddly, and you can cuddle them all night. So the building, it's saying therefore that we had a wooden roof. A wooden ridge, a wooden roof is doable. And then that goes to the theory that I've got to put this in there, that when we look at the likes of Stonehenge, there's this probable theory that Stonehenge would have a roof on it, which is a theory that 99% of all archaeologists in Britain dismiss. But if this had a roof on it, this area itself, the central area at Stonehenge, isn't much bigger than this. It's not much bigger than this. So, you know, if this had a roof on it, why not Stonehenge? Anyway, moving on from that, we'll be looking at that in 2 weeks' time. So it's said, now this is another fact why this isn't washed up timber, right? The theories for roofing this says that it would have needed around 700 meters of timber to construct the roof. Now, okay, how the hell is that going to be washed up on the shore, right? One second. I gotta hang on a minute. Oh, right, sorry. I needed my cup then. One of the things, you're not going to get that amount of timber washed up on the shore. So if it's talking about 700 meters of timber to create the roof, you're not going to.
A logging company.
Oh yeah, we've got a Norwegian bloody logging company, and yeah, that's great. IKEA existed back then. That's the proof.
I've seen a logging company, and it's
not in the Neolithic period. Anne, shut up. Right. Okay. I love you, Anne. I really do.
It's all in the water, you know.
Yeah. Okay, right. Okay, we've got a logging company, right? Yeah, fair enough. Okay, IKEA existed back then. Yeah. No, Anne. Oh God, I don't know if Henry's there.
It's all right. It's all right. It's just you know.
Yeah, and well, hang on a minute. I'm getting all these messages off Henry, right? Right, here we go. I'm saying go on YouTube. Apparently, he's in Kazakhstan. I sent you a WhatsApp. Have urgent meeting to go to. Might be there at half time.
Okay. Oh, don't worry about it. Just
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway. Flippin' heck. Right, anyway, we're actually coming to the end of the lecture now anyway. So, right, I've lost where I am now. Right, okay, Anne, my head's blown. You've blown my head. Right, so finally, what we're going to do, we're coming up to 7 minutes past 9. So, the archaeologists who explored the site in 1949, yeah, it was explored in 1949, not 1910 or 1800. But Charles Calder explored the site in 1949. He thought that Stanidale was a temple, a name that has stuck with a design originating from Mediterranean temples. He saw a strong resemblance to these structures. And you know what? He's not too wrong. That looks like some of the temple sites that are in Malta. There would be no conceivable link. But I'm not saying this is a temple site. I'm saying this is a community site, but I'm saying this is a very large site. Naturally, with all the other houses around this landscape, this would seem to be a hub. And this is the most well-built structure. He saw a strong resemblance with these Maltese sites. It is almost impossible not to assume that the Maltese temples are the prototypes from which Stanidale is derived and which solve the question of its purpose. Well, that wouldn't be a prototype, but people are thinking the same. They've got this sort of same ilk, right? Lots of archaeologists have cast doubt on this theory of a temple, right? But agree that the building is unique in Shetland of the period, in apparently being designed for communal use or for a single person. I'm not going to go with a single person. I'm going to go with community use. This would have been perfect. And there's also something to be said about the landscape, right? And it's quite clear. I don't know if you've seen it. All the buildings. There's 30 buildings, sort of roundhouses spread out around this site. They don't all jog up next door to each other like we're talking about Skara Brae, right? Or Steness or Barnhouse, right? They're not all up against each other. They're spread out. That says one thing. This landscape must have been surrounded by trees because that gave them shelter from the harsh conditions that Shetland have. Why other than that? We talk about Skara Brae, all the buildings being together because of the conditions, right? But these houses were spread out. They didn't need that level of shelter that we see at Skara Brae. So in absence of evidence, that's what we've got. So finally, excavations have found sherds of Bronze Age pottery here, pottery with flat bases, which would be the likes of grooved ware, which you see on mainland Orkney. They've got evidence of burnt barley grains and the remains of sheep and cattle. I wonder if those sheep and cattle were butchered in the same way as that cattle from thousands of years later at the site at Dinas Powys. I wonder, and they would have been exactly the same sheeps that I've got wandering around my field today. Shetland sheep, or my Borray sheep. We call them sheeps because they're tiny. One of the buildings at Stanidale contains saddle querns. Saddle quern is basically a stone which has been worn out in the middle. And they would have used what's known as grain rubbers, basically a pebble going back and forth. So they found them at the site, which would have been used to grind the barley, finding barley evidence and barley grains, which looked like they would be burnt. This site itself, I wanted to bring you this at the end today as being one of those pièces de résistance sites. And what we're going to do, we're going to just basically scroll through these images, right? And basically there it is within the landscape. There's as you go in. I really want to see this side, and that these stones might be something to do with the courtyard in front, sort of an area in front. And we're looking there, giving you an idea. That looks a lot bigger than the dimensions I'm given, 12.5 meters long by 7. And what we've got here, we've got these stones that would have given some support to the timbers. Obviously, I would say that the weight would have been offset. And again, if I show that, if you've got a beam itself, it would have been, the weight would have been offset into the mound. right? Rather than being directly put on these pillars, which would have caused a weakness, the weight would have been offset into the mound. And this is one thing that I'm learning as I'm building. Offset into the mound. That's why you've got the mound there, because it's dry stone, and it gives you more height as well. There we go. And just going back again over the images, there it is. Stannydale, this area. Going into the site again. We're loving this site. That gives you an idea of scale. You can fit quite a few people in there. You're not talking about 1,000 people like going to a Hawkwind concert, but you can get quite a number of people in there anyway, at least 100 plus. Quite a big area to put a roof over. This has got to be in my top 5 of Neolithic sites in Britain. It has to be. And Thornborough Henges, that's going to be another one. And look at that again. We're loving that. And again, there we go. So what we're going to do, we're going to call it a day. And you say that before I take us off camera.
It reminds me of the amphitheatre at Clean.
It does. And do you know what somebody said? Why are we doing the amphitheatre at Clean when we're supposed to be doing Neolithic archaeology?
Yeah. I mean, it's just because of the thickness of the walls and everything, So it's obviously a good way to build something,
It is. And actually, the amphitheatre walls at Culzean, that would have taken a great deal of timber as well. And then weight, like St Albans as well, the theatre at St Albans, the stand itself offsets the weight of the timber.
Yeah.
You're talking about pulling to the ground, and sort of, this is really important when you're building. And those flimsy posts wouldn't have been enough to support the timber, right? They're not flimsy. They're not flimsy stones, but the weight is pushed into those stones, pushing those stones into the ground. So what you need to do is use them as supports, but the timber is actually going directly into the stone itself, and that's what we're doing. Right, okay, then we're going to call that a day now. All be ready with your questions. And I don't know what the hell happened to Henry tonight.
Oh, it was his computer. He's got Iron Age Third World computer.
Well, no, he's in Kazakhstan.
He lives in Wick.
He's not in Wick now. He's away. So some people have put things on the chat today. Have they found anything at all in Tress Nest burial chamber pottery? Yeah, they did. No, they oh God, we came to that. There was Bronze Age material. They found the 2 balls. The stone balls. They found the scale knives, but not much more than that. And that's basically that story. At Tress Nest, the site there. And somebody says, think out of the box. Imported wood. What about a roof platform, not just a roof? Well, actually, thanks for embarrassing me, Henry, because that's exactly what we talk about when we talk about Brochs, a platform, a 2-story building, and that's quite possible. And then, oh God, you've got another layer there, and that would then talk about those pillars supporting beams. And then that is a really good point. Yeah, thank you for that, Henry. Henry is there. What's wrong with you? Oh God. So if we go, and you don't have talk some nonsense some days. Hey, Drina, have you noticed that I bully Anne continually in this lecture? So if we go with this and we think about this, that idea, let's just sort of put that idea there. And we just put a bit of annotation and we go. So if we think about these beams supporting a floor level, maybe, and then those supporting the floor level, and that going there, something like that. And obviously you're going to need other cross beams and so on about this as well. But then you might, and it might be sort of a bias shape that may have been roofed there, that may have been roofed, and that may have been open, right? The interesting thing is then you'd have a roof then that the weight is offset for the roof line, into the mound. So that would work actually. So anyway, let's get off that
Also,
and let's go back.
If you look at the topography, you'd want something that actually is viewing across the topography and making an impression.
Well, I tell you what, with nothing else like this, these people just were show-offs.
So basically, you want something uplifted that would actually stand out.
And and you are right in mentioning that, because the topography there is relatively flat. And yeah, and from the hills around you could see it. Yeah, you're right. And the horseshoe shape, well, the metal horseshoes didn't exist back then, but the idea of the horseshoe and yeah, let's just not go there. I'm being caught out too many times. Right, so okay then, what we're going to do, or a talk, or an iron talk, but iron talks don't come in for a while. So right, okay, so let's off that now. Henry, what's you're with us today, right? So anyway, so it was 7 of us. This is the most people we've had on a Wednesday evening in ages. So right, Margaret, by the way, Henry, right. Goff, anything you want to say, lovely?
Oh, I mean, the images were very, very good tonight. I found it very interesting. Getting back to the timbers and the posts, highly unlikely came across the North Sea, because the main current affecting the north of the UK and Orkney and Shetland is the North Atlantic drift, which of course is the Gulf Stream. So it's coming the other way, not from Norway to.
Oh yeah, like almost like anti-surf,
even 5,000 or 7,000 years ago. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Carl.
Yeah,
I thought it could be coming from Canada.
Oh, shut up about the trees from Canada. There would have been the problem.
The current doesn't come from Canada.
Oh,
no,
right,
it comes from the Gulf Stream
and then goes across the Atlantic. So it's possible there'd be driftwood, but not huge trees, things like that.
No. And the problem is, right, I know myself, right, you're building something, right? Tell you what, we're going to wait 20 years to get enough timber to do the roof. By the time we got the timber, it'll be rotten. You know, and also you don't know, driftwood is good, right? But it's not structurally bearing. You're not going to get the quality that you need for the roof.
No, they couldn't have come. They're Norwegian spruce. They're from Norway, and they wouldn't come from Norway unless they dragged them across somehow. I don't know. So yeah, you're probably right. I think you're right. I think,
and as I say, Norway spruce already growing in Orkney, not Orkney, Shetland. So
yeah, very good. Thanks very much, Carl. It was good. Yeah.
And one other point. Thank you for that, Goff. One other point is that I'm going to say this. One of the biggest mistakes archaeologists do when they're reconstructing buildings is they use pine, right? They use evergreen. Well, this actually goes against the grain. They're using Scots pine, which is obviously evergreen, the conifers, and so how long? Maybe the spruce, and I know the Scots pine was a hell of a lot better quality than, say, for example, larch, because we've got larch, it's crap. But when people are reconstructing the past, they're always using the wrong materials.
Larch lap.
They're using the wrong material.
Like rack for your school.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we don't talk about rack. Right. Anyway, thanks for that, Goff. Okay. Talking about women, Richard.
Where's your wife?
We can't even hear him. He's on mute. Well, I'll tell you what. Go on, Rich.
Sorry,
anything?
Carl. Here I am. Oh,
Anything?
really interesting subject. And I say, wondering about timber washed up on the shore, but there's I've seen some pretty big logs washed up down the old harbour. So
yeah, but you don't talk about women like that. Yeah.
Logs, not dogs.
I meant logs. No, the point is I've seen trees washed up, but it's the uniformity of the standard, and you're not going to get it. You're really not going to get it. It's just, and obviously we've just talked about the Gulf Stream and the North Atlantic currents and so on, and you're not going to get it. You're really not going to get that quality. Oh, I know there is one other thing. Right? This is key, Anne. This is on the west side of the island, not the east side of the island.
The west.
You'd have to drag there's lots of things against that theory. Anyway, there would have been material, but obviously not in that quantity.
Yeah.
So, right, okay, thank you for that, Richard. Not to knock you down, but anything from you, Andy?
A couple of things. Those walls, that thickness certainly would be capable of carrying another layer, if that's possible. I don't see why timber couldn't have been imported. The people were, so they've got to have got there somehow. And the other thing was, has not anybody done any sort of stratified pollen testing? Because that would say whether the trees were there or not.
Obviously, the excavations were 1948. No, 1949. Actually, that's the other thing. Let's again think outside the box. Let's import the timber, right? But we've got that timber on that scale, but we can't disclude that. We've discluded washed up timber, but importing material. Let's just leave that there. But we do know timber was used, right?
Sure it was. Yeah.
Scots pine definitely used, and that grew on the island. So there you go.
Yeah.
Never dismiss these things. Okay. Anything else, Andy?
Nope, that's it. Interesting site. Really interesting sites.
Thank you very much. I'm glad. And obviously the nest next week. Everyone has their plan in front of them, including you.
Well, I
Henry.
remember that. I haven't got that. Could you email it to me?
Oh God! I thought. Right. Okay. I thought
It's
you had
possible.
one.
No, it's possible. It's possible you've got the old email address. But if you use the new one that I use,
No, we sent them in the post. We sent them in the post.
Oh, did you? Oh, I haven't got my. I haven't seen any posts. I'll check. I haven't seen any. So
Right. Okay. It would have been sent to you in the last week. So I'll get that to you hook or by crook, Andy. Okay.
thank you very much.
My pleasure. Right. Margaret, anything from you, darling?
Yeah, the Stanidale Temple, it looks very neat and tidy. There's not a rock out of place. How much higher do you think it would have been?
That's the question we don't know, but obviously there's an answer to this question. You can only build a certain height with dry stone, but if you go to Mapungubwe in Great Zimbabwe, you can see dry stone walls at 10, 12 meters high. So, but there's no reason to say that timber wasn't used to get the extra height. So it's out there.
Why would you think there wasn't ever timber on Shetland Islands?
Say that again.
Why would you think there wasn't ever any timber on any trees on the Shetlands?
Well, no, there was always trees. There were trees on Shetland, but the fact of the matter is, lots of archaeologists argue that as humanity grows on places like Shetland and Orkney, they cut down all the trees. But then again, we had the Easter Island lecture, if you remember, and we got to the conclusion it wasn't the Easter Islanders who cut down all the bloody trees. It was the idiots who were going onto the island, like the Dutch and the English, who were taking the trees. That's led to. We had that lecture, right? And there were trees. Unfortunately, I think the trees continued on there until much later, like the Easter Island people.
Until the sheep.
Until the sheep.
Those dratted sheep.
Well, you have to come and see my sheep. You can cuddle them.
They look lovely.
They are cuddly. Anything else, Margaret?
No, I don't think. Oh, any middens around it?
Oh, yeah, good one.
Obviously the problem is with this site is that we're talking about the smaller houses, we're talking about the central spaces, we're talking about charcoal evidence within this building, but the thing is, because this is one of those sites that, you know, it just came to me at the last minute. There's probably a lot more information that we haven't done, but you know, lots of the work was done before radiocarbon dating and so on. So that's the problem.
Yeah, just almost, I mean, it's nice. It looks almost too nice and neat and tidy, whereas there's no rubble, no extra stones lying about anywhere.
That's answered by the fact that when the landscape was being when cultivation was brought into the site much later, all the buildings around the outside would have been flattened and so on. But obviously, that stone would have been used to create building walls, and there is a wall around the landscape there, and those stones would have come from that site, and obviously they would, for cultivation, they would have need to have cleared the field, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Margaret, before we move on?
That's good.
No.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
I won't be
right.
here for the next 2 weeks.
Oh my God, how am I going to explain that on Tuesday? Oh, for God's sake.
Well, I'm going to miss your Nessa Brodger thingy then, aren't I?
You are, and I can't hold it off anymore, love. I'm sorry.
Can't you? Oh, go on.
Oh, you can.
Go on.
Go on.
I'm sure there'll be other stuff. Anyway,
Well,
thanks for.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry about me. Doesn't matter.
Watch the recording.
What's the recording?
Yes, I could do. Yeah.
Yes, you can. You're going to have to. Thank
Yeah,
you
but
very
I like
much,
to
Margaret.
put- I like to
Again.
put
Thank you.
in every
Thank you.
now and then.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Right. Oh, and actually, there is one more year of excavation at the Nessa Brodger next year, so we could do that again. Good. So we could do the final Nessa Brodger excavation this time next year because they've got one more season on it. Right. Okay. Then quickly, Anne, anything?
No, just a good variety of Neolithic buildings, and I suppose by the end of it, I thought the ones in Ireland were probably quite possible, you know, quite
Quite possible what?
possibly, you know, they kind of fit in,
Yes.
you
Exactly.
know,
Exactly.
not exactly, but you know, because they're just buildings, but whereas what we've looked at otherwise has been like earthworks, really.
The more extensive types of sites. Yes, they are, Anne. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. If there's nothing else from you, Anne, let's see if there's anything from Henry, and that'll be done.
Greetings.
Oh,
Yeah, go on.
First of all, I don't know if you looked at any of the things I sent you.
Well, today has been a full-on day. We did the Irish one. That you sent me. But obviously, anything else we can do next week. But obviously, the images, because you've been to Pompeii, so that might be useful to chuck them in next week.
Oh.
Yeah, I've got a book for you.
Oh.
It's probably in Italian, so I have to bloody learn
No, it's
Italian.
in French. It's a French book, actually.
a French book on Pompeii. Oh, great.
I thought you'd just love it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to love it. So Pompeii, we will do a little bit about that next week, and any of the links from Henry. We did the Irish link from you, Henry, anyway, which I really appreciate. That was part of the lecture today. So, okay, anybody, Henry, would you like to say anything else?
Yeah, I've just got the passport washed and cleaned, so that's all right. Certain agencies, so that's good. So I might be back next week.
Okay. I really appreciate you being on today as well. So you might be on next week. And somebody thought the lecture was so good tonight, they've sent me a £10 donation. So there you go.
Ooh,
Oh, very good.
very
That
nice.
good.
It was from Goff. Right. Okay then.
Oh.
Thank you very much. So next week we'll be doing a Nessa Brodger. So if anyone wants to say anything, say it now. Okay. Nobody said it. Okay. So what I'm going to say, I really appreciate you all being here tonight. So Andy, see you next week. Margaret in 2 weeks. Anne, Henry, and Richard and Goff. I'll see you next week. Thank you very much for your time.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Have a nice
Thanks, Carl.
holiday. If you're
Bye.
going on holiday.
My pleasure. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carl. Bye-bye.
My pleasure, Andy. Thank you. And
Ciao.
you, Anne. Take care.
Ciao,
to you,
fella.
Henry. And beware of the people in Kurdistan.
Actually, they've heard about you, and also Chris wouldn't employ anyone who looked like the said person.
Okay. We yes. Well, you know, you do mix with you. Yeah, you do mix with the ho-paro on the buses. Exactly.
In his future film.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for knocking me down. Did you actually mention? Did you actually mention to Chris that you knew me?
He said he didn't recall the name.
No, I didn't think so. No, I didn't think so. Oh, never mind. He probably knew me as related to Bonnie Langford. Oh God. Okay then. Cool. Anyway.
Interesting 2 weeks.
Good.
We won't
I look
talk to you
forward
about won't talk to you about Naomi Campbell either.
Yeah, shut up about Naomi Campbell. Good. Okay then. Anything else, Henry?
No, that's it. I think you need to go and have a long rest.
After this one, I do. Exactly. Anyway, thanks for everything, Henry, and I will see you soon.
Right. Have a look at what I just sent you recently.
On email, I will.
Yeah.
I will.
A bit of Roman.
Yeah, and we might do a bit of Roman next week, thanks to you. And we'll use your images next week, even though they all copyright. But I know you don't mind.
Yeah, it's the boys in Langford you need to worry about.
Yeah. Okay. We'll leave that one.
Bye for now.
Okay. I'll speak to you soon, my friend. Look after yourself. I'll have a good old read. Thank you. Night.
Bye.
Bye. Anyone watching on YouTube, really appreciate that, and the person who actually sent the donation as well, really appreciate that. And if anyone else would like to say anything on YouTube, they can do so now. I'm just going to do my OCD thing and look at the chat box. Just sort of reiterate that. So chat box from Margaret. Have they found anything at all at Tress Nest, Burial Chamber, Pottery, etc.? They probably have, but it wasn't in my notes. I think I should have answered. Henry said, think out of the box, imported wood. Okay, fair enough. Smack on the wrist for that one. That was at the site that we've just done in Scotland, the wonderful monument there. And also, what about a roof platform, not just a roof? Yeah, we'll go with that as well. So, okay, that's everything done on the chat box on 3, 2, 1. Roofing over and out. Thank you very much. And anyone else online, thank you very much. I'm going to go now. It's been a much longer one tonight, and we've got Wednesday next week again, 7:30. Wednesday in the morning, 11. Next week at 7:30, and Sunday as well. A dabble with anything that goes on Sunday. If there's nothing else, think about that roof at our site in Shetland. Anyway, many thanks. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Night, and thanks for your